morning, and thank you so much for joining us today for today's Coresight Classroom. We are really pleased to have Gianvito Dongia, Managing Partner, Creative Capital, joining us today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our host, Ms. Deborah Weinswick, CEO and co-founder of Coresight Research.
Anna, thank you so much. And depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Coresight Classrooms. I am your host, Deborah Weinswig, and we want to welcome back Gianvito Dongia. He is one of the managing partners of Creative Capital China and has been in China for almost 10 years. His work focuses on two main aspects: assisting domestic brands in building and applying their DNA throughout product, retail, communication identity, and supporting international clients in customizing their storytelling and brand experience for the Chinese market. Today, we are going to cover many topics, including how coronavirus is changing the bricks and mortar retail and the new normal in China. We'll have a video available on our site in 24 hours for those of you who would like to view this again. And lastly, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen during our conversation if you would like to ask questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gianvito. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Deborah, and good morning, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be with you today, and I will jump directly into today's topic by sharing the screen that I guess you can see. So today we are going to talking about how brands evolved their business models, especially in retail in China, in order to cope with the challenges brought by the coronavirus. Before jumping into the topic, just a few words about myself, about who we are. So I'm Gianvito Dongia, managing partner of Altavia and Creative Capital. So Altavia and Creative Capital, they are an independent worldwide communication group specialized in retail. So we help retailers in better connected with their consumers. It's a French group, so Altavia has been established since 1983 in Paris, and then over the past 40 years we developed in over 30 countries. And we entered China in 2005. We have offices in the main strategic cities in China. And what we do with our clients is helping them in retail activation and in branding, thanks to the Creative Capital, which is the branding agency that has been acquired last year by the group. So our services moves from actually branding to retail activation and communication. That's why we thought that the best way to support our consumers that are actually brands and retailers playing in different sectors was to share with them what is happening actually in China and what to trace back what happened in China during the past 3 months from different point of view, so from a retail perspective, but also from a business models and branding perspective, in order to provide them with references about how to possible apply similar models in other countries. And so through the presentation, we will go through 3 phases, so from the peak to the recovery to the today's new normal in China. Let's start by the first one. So how the coronavirus changed the retail in China. So I will trace back what happened since February. So as you can imagine what happened end of January, beginning of February during the epidemic, it was that all the offline stores, they have to close. So both internationals and local brands, they had to shut down more than 50% or the store, or even up to 80%. And the sales dropped a lot. So totally at that time, during the first 2 weeks, by only 20%, but then later on, by counting only offline, it was even higher than 50%. So then how brands reacted to this issue? They turned all their operations from offline to online, relying on an existing infrastructure that was already there. So turning everything online means 2 things. First things, you need to move all the operations online. So operations related to placing orders, but also deliver orders in a way that makes consumers feel that they can receive an order in a safety manner during the lockdown. So all the brands implemented a contactless delivery, where there are two ways to do it, as you can see from the images. You can pick up your order in a spot that is placed outside the shop, what you deliver through the app or through the WeChat mini program of the brand, or what you order is delivered in a pick-up spot which is placed downstairs your building, which is automatic. So you can open it by scanning it using your WeChat. So in this way, people could feel safe that they could get their delivery without any contact with delivery people. And brands, they invested a lot in communicating with their consumers, all the safety measures behind the delivery process. So it's what we call worry-free narrative. So when customers, they place an order, they receive these kinds of messages online. So sharing with them what I'm doing as a brand to make the delivery process safe. And international retailers, for example, Starbucks, that started a contactless delivery for the first time in China during the epidemic, they also provided instructions on their app in China, on their WeChat mini programs about how to educate consumers to place the order and receive it in this new way, in this contactless way, contactless delivery. And besides operations, so moving everything online for brands means in China also engaging consumers online. So from offline to online. So how it has been possible for brands to engage online with consumers during the lockdown? Through live streaming sessions. Live streaming sessions that are run through the e-commerce platforms or through the WeChat mini program of the brands. And it has been done in any industries. Just to give you some examples, during the lockdown, shopping malls in all cities in China were closed. So how people keep loyal their consumers in shopping malls, how brands reacted to it. So department stores and shopping mall, through their own e-commerce platforms and WeChat mini programs, they started to run live streaming sessions through which consumers can experience virtually the new products and also place an order and got the products delivered home. These live streaming interactions, it happens also in other industries, such as, for example, the homeware, where from the few shops that stayed open only for these live streaming sessions, branded started to interact live with consumers and introduce the new products. And then this way of digital interaction got on a higher level even by providing consumer with virtual experience of shops and department stores. This is what it has been launched by Mix City, a department store in China, where by collaborating with brands, they launched virtual tours of the shops. And then at the end of the tour, people, they can select the item and then they can place an order. So it's even a higher level of experience. Even the car industry has been affected by this new way of engaging. You see how actually it's possible to experience the features of the car through live streaming.
Gianvito, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
What industry do you think we saw the most innovation in during the crisis?
The industry, actually we see that the most innovative industries in applying this new model has been restaurants.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we will see later how actually they solved their problem of being closed, but they kept selling their dish on the menu through live streaming. And why cars, for example, is also very interesting to see, because most of people during the epidemic, they didn't want to take public transport. So the sales of cars boomed in China. So live streaming was a way to engage with consumers and to introduce the product's feature, even by having all the shops closed.
Thank
and
you.
But launching new products, I mean, affected every industry. Even you see here Tmall, the biggest e-commerce platform, one of the biggest in China, that cooperated with brands in launching new product lines online with great results in terms of views and in terms of sales. And also, what is very interesting here to notice is that brands starting to use also the WeChat private account of sales assistants, so to create group with consumers and to start promoting products through WeChat groups. It's like using our own WhatsApp group, for example, to promote products and sell them. So it's an even more private and intimate way to engage with consumers online. And these ways of engagement helped as well as also brands during the fashion week to keep an interaction with consumers online. Dior, for example, he launched his fashion week online in China during live streaming. In this way, it was possible for the brands to engage with local KOL and local brand ambassador that could not fly to Europe because everything was locked down at the time. So all European countries closed their borders to incomers from China.
Gianvito, one other question. These behaviors, and you may address this a bit later, but what do you think kind of ends up being a little stickier, right? If I can save time and go online, maybe have a more interactive or immersive experience, how do you think that impacts the offline longer term, and which industries do you think are the most impacted?
But the problem is it created a challenge for the offline industry, because now consumers experience a higher level of interaction online. So, and even now that in the offline we are back to normal, people keep going more than even before online. So in terms of being omni-channels, the expectations for consumers, for brands, are as even higher, because consumers got used to this new way of engaging with brands. So especially for traditional retailers that even in China were not used to this omni-channel engagement mode, that's the big issue. Because now is really everything is O2O in China. And that's why we can see that thanks to the crisis, even traditional luxury brands that usually are more reluctant on being online, they open their flagship store on Tmall. Usually luxury brands are the last ones to go online, but we see that a few weeks after Prada, Miu Miu, or even IKEA, which is not luxury, but still more traditional in terms of business models, since we talk about online, they open their flagship store. So it's really a challenge for retailers. And for some other brands, like in cosmetic industry, for example, the online was actually not a challenge because they were already there. I mean, in China, most of the cosmetic brands, they rely on online KOL to boost their sales. So they just use it even more. And this is restaurants. When I mentioned how do they evolve their business models. So most of them, they have been closed for 2 months. So they started to do live streaming sessions, teaching people about how to prepare the dish at home. But at the same way, by partnering with e-commerce platforms, if customers were not willing to prepare the dish at home, they could order the dish that they can see through the same platform through which they are watching the live streaming. And so this partnership between e-commerce and restaurants really helped traditional business models to evolve. Because also, I give you another example related to restaurants as well. Restaurants had to cope with the issue of labor surplus because all their offline employees had no job. So how to solve this issue? Restaurants partnered with e-commerce retailers in China that at that time they have a problem of labor shortage because they had to deal with a much higher number of orders. So these e-commerce and with what we call the new retailers in China, they temporarily employed staff from offline restaurants and train them in order to provide services related to delivery and packaging. And at the same time, they also kept this partnership with restaurants related to delivery. So the same e-commerce platform partner with restaurants and make it possible to deliver at home the dishes that you see prepared during the live streaming with all the complementary cooking tools that you need to do it. So it was a very, very innovative way of engaging with consumers. So why brands changed this way of engaging? Because consumers also changed. We see that during the peak of the epidemic, during the Chinese New Year, so all the offline purchases were almost close to zero because people could not go out. So all the consumers turned online. And what is interesting to see that even traditional consumers, they usually are not active online, such as men in their 50s, they also became an active users. So there is a change in behavior, but an active user that is different from how they used to be before, because all these new and also old online consumers in China, they have a spending behavior which is more conservative, more eco-consciousness, and also much more proud of being Chinese. So they buy more local brands to support the local industries. So to show that they're close.
And there's this, kind of rise in nationalism. I mean, we already saw, I would say a significant change in terms of just demand for, Chinese brands. And we were even starting to see in the US at some of the, more luxury oriented malls that they were starting to think about, carrying some of these brands as well. And it seems like it's absolutely accelerated it.
Yeah, it's the crisis for sure accelerated its sense of belongingness, this way to support local brands, to buy more local. But in order to be actually selected as brands, so local brands, they need to show that they supported local society. So that was very important. And so this is related to the point number 4 of this slide. So brands need to be,
did a good job of that? Like, what's an example of if it's a Western company who, I mean, we saw a lot of companies donate money, but I think it needed to go beyond that, right?
Yeah. Actually, the best players from this point of view were the local brands in China. Give you some example. For example, we have Baidu, which is the equivalent of Google. So how do they show their support to local society? By actually improving their existing services. So improving their pages in order to share data with consumers about the evolution of the epidemic, upgrading the functions of Baidu Map by monitoring and geolocalizing all the peoples around your area to spot if there is any new case of infection and to see where people have been in the last 48 hours. They supported it by running for free online medical consulting sessions when people could not go easily to hospitals, and even by more traditional ways such as donating, because they mix like tangible actions with more social responsible actions in terms of communications. So another perfect example is Alibaba, because they mixed donations with also an upgrades in terms of services of all their existing platforms related to the Alibaba ecosystem. For example, they launched a new app through which they helped actually local farmers in Wuhan to clear their stock due to the logistic shutdown related to the lockdown. Or like they made available for free all the data on their AI cloud, which is called Aliyun. Usually brands and research institutes, they need to pay for get this data. But during the epidemic, they were made it for free in order to enable other research institutes to use them to fight against the epidemic and try to find the solutions. But also like, this is the supermarkets belonging to Alibaba Group, the new retail model. They started to donate food for free to local hospitals in Wuhan and even to the zoo in Wuhan, just to show you how they want to show that how they are close to the local populations. But even small gestures, they made a great impact. This is a case from a milk brand, a milk group in China. They saw pictures shared on WeChat of a nurse that used the milk box plastic handle to actually ease the pain of the elastic bands on the ears by wearing the mask the whole day. So how do they react? By donating thousands of milk boxes and plastic handles to hospitals in Wuhan. And this has got viral and also brought the brand much closer to consumers. We have as well CEO like of companies such this one who shared videos online by reassuring employees that they would not cut the salaries. So you need to show that you care about your own employees before caring of your consumers. So they played very well in this sense, the local brands. And of course, some of them, they played in a more interactive and engaging way. Like this is an example from the Harbin beer, where they, in cooperating with League of Legends, they launched online cheers sessions by gathering online together millions of consumers during the epidemic. And they mix this more funny way with also more educational messages, like releasing a set of posters where they gave advices to different labor categories about how to go back work by protecting yourself and protecting the others. So it has been really a mix, and some of brands, they gave up with their commercial promotional content and they focus only on safety content, such as Uniqlo, that for weeks they just advertise how to keep yourself safe, how to protect yourself. And also brands that they already bought a commercial space outdoor before the epidemic, then they quickly adjusted the content. Here we have an example from an e-commerce platform in China that they had already paid for that space during that period. People could not go out, so they adjusted the content by writing, if you are looking at this advertising, you are doing something wrong. You should stay at home and wait for the spring to come. And this message also got viral. So it's a clever way to use the space that you paid for in a way which is more relevant for consumers, for the state of mind, for the mood of consumers at that time.
I think you brought up something incredibly important, which is what we saw in China was a lot of kind of feel good, positive, right? You know, and I think that that's very unique and potentially helped China kind of get through this faster because the consumer mindset was healthier, if you will. Whereas I think what we're seeing in other parts of the world, there is a bit more negativity, and I really think these are some amazing examples in terms of, you know, what led to that.
Yeah, but brands here, they keep really, I mean, positive is an important key word of this crisis. Brands try to keep a positive message in different ways. I mean, some of them, like for example, these brands producing sanitizing products, they release videos by showing to consumers, we are fighting with you. We are all back to work. We are doing our best to keep delivering products. So you should be confident that we can get through it. We can get over it. So this is a way to show that you are positive. But another way is like to use your products to promote a positive lifestyle during the lockdown. I give you just a video as an example from InnoHerb, a local skincare brand. I play only 2 minutes. So what is happening here? The brand is telling consumers, even if you are locked down at home, keep a healthy lifestyles. And by doing a healthy lifestyle, it also includes keep doing your skincare, even if it's just for a phone call, a video call, or for preparing to get your dinner.
晚上下楼取快递啦，好开心啊！终于能出门了。
开启24小时的云办公，做9宫格里最精致的女孩。
So it's a positive message, and sometimes they mix this positive message with elements of local culture. This is an example from another cosmetic brand who created an advertising inspired by Mulan, the Chinese heroines, by saying it has been done for the Women's Day in China. They say women's are the new, who are the new Mulans of today? People, women, they are helping us to fight against the virus according to their own job. And so for each of them, they linked a product that can help them actually. So you see that they place the product within a commercial context, but in a very empathic way. And then of course, they turn all their productions, their traditional production related to cosmetics and makeup, to sanitizing gels, to masks, and they donated a lot of them for free to local hospitals. So they mix together, positive, tangible actions with empathic messages. And we have as well international brands that they adjusted as well their offers, because also adjusting your offer and your service to people new needs during the lockdown is also another way to show how you support society. So we have Nike, for example, that introduced 20 minutes workout sessions at home to be shared with your family as well. And Lululemon, for example, that they started to launch not only yoga sessions online, but they involved many key opinion leaders and influencers and actually trainers online in China, that through different platforms, through live streamings, they help consumers to keep doing and guiding them in doing their daily yoga session during the lockdown. So we can really feel how brands tried their best to keep a positive narrative with consumers in different ways.
Do you think that some of these Western brands, right, like Nike and Lululemon, what they learned during the crisis in China, do you think that it's in their DNA to apply that back to the West? Or, this is one of the, I think, questions we grapple with a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's a lesson that should be applied in the West, because actually China was the first country to actually learn these lessons. But it's a lesson that it was already before the epidemic. Brands were talking about how to be local, so how to connect with local consumers by keeping a global branding strategy. And that's what actually they started to do in China. Nike, Lululemon, I keep my own DNA, but I adjust the way I deliver my promise in a way that I can be more relevant for you. And so brands should apply the same logic in other countries by seeing how is the mood of consumers in the other countries, what are their needs, and what we can do to meet their needs using the existing technological infrastructure that we have. In China was easier because China was already an omni-channel O2O market, and it helped a lot, not only in retailing and branding, but also in education. So to connect to the next sessions, we see that as soon as the Chinese New Year holidays were over, all the schools started to follow the guidelines from the Ministry of the Education about how to deliver classes online. So it was something that was not left to the initiative of schools, but was supported by the Central Ministry of Education. And then training centers, they actually followed the example. So private training centers, they started to move all their classes from offline to online for free. It was also another way to show them that they are close to consumers. And then last but not least, even universities, even top universities in China, the equivalent of Harvard, they started to transfer their education content through more engaging platforms such as TikTok. Give you an example here. So we see here in hybridizations actually of the channels between more traditional educational channels and entertaining one, actually to address younger consumers in China. And so thanks to these technological infrastructures that was already there, it has been possible for us as well to go back to work online almost since the end of February. In our company, we got back to normal operations since February 24th. But it's a new normal. Why we call it a new normal? Because we had to stay home for around 2 weeks as well. But then all our offline operations has been transferred online through some specific apps like TikTok or WeChat Work. They have a lot of functions related actually to each department. But first of all, the most important function that they have is that they have a system through which you input your body temperature every day before getting to work. So our HR department, as all the other departments in the other companies, they got information about our body temperature before we get to the company. And then HR, finance, job interviews, meetings. So all the paper materials that we used to handle has been completely transferred online. And it has been interesting to see how all the process that was kind of slower, using papers, now became completely online, from the drafting of a contract to a final approval or to a business meeting with clients. So it's really the importance of technology. And technology has been behind actually the new normal in China, because it was possible to quickly recover because Chinese companies and the overall the whole society, they relied on the collaboration between brands and data company. So it was possible to monitor the evolutions of the epidemic city by city, district by district, thanks to the app on Baidu or other apps. And then also new technology helped as well to keep delivering products, helped also hospitals to welcome first, at the first stage, their potential infected people before bringing them into contact with doctors. And technology helped as well subways, for example, to go back to a normal running mode, because through thermal cameras, our body temperature is immediately detected when we enter actually the security gate of subways. So technology was really behind this new recovery on China. And also technology helped to control the flow of people. This is a QR code which is related to each person account on WeChat or Alipay, that according to the colors, it tells you whether the person completed the quarantine process and where the person come from. So I can enter, even nowadays, a public office, a shop, a restaurant, only if I show my green QR code. If it's yellow, it means that I left Shanghai in the past 2 weeks. So probably I come from a sensitive region, so not every place it let me enter. If it's red, it means that I come back from Europe or I didn't finish my quarantine. And so this was a way to keep monitoring people, and also how to keep social distance in the new normal. So every restaurant, every public places, they adjusted their packaging, they adjusted the setting of the tables, they adjusting also the number of people that could get into the elevator. So that has been done especially during the first month of the recovery. And I want to show here through a video how we went back to work. And I hope it can provide suggestions also to companies that are getting ready in US to open again. So we are taking temperature every day. When we put the data as well on our company digital database. And we keep wearing masks every day, up to nowadays. So that's similar to action that has been taken by most of the companies in China. And in terms of how consumers are back to this new normal, we see that there is an increase of the spending power and spending behavior compared to the peak of the epidemic. And also we see that what people learn to do online, such as education, remote work, live streaming sessions, online medical consultation, they are very strong even after the peak, which means that during the epidemic, the consumers became an omni-channel consumers, and this omni-channel behavior is still very, very hot even nowadays. But in terms of product categories, we don't really see a revenge spending, but we see consumers that they spend less, but they spend better. So the categories so far that are most in demand are the ones related to healthcare, healthy lifestyle, and self-learning and studying. So based on these new behaviors of consumers, brands started to move from fully empathic content to a more commercial content, but without forgetting to be close and relevant for the new values of consumers. So we see here, for example, an example from a Perfect Diary, a local cosmetic brand that relying on the new consumers' actually consciousness in terms of protecting animals, being green. They launched with the most important KOL in China a new shadow palette inspired by the pets actually of the KOL, and then they donate 1 RMB of each SKU sold to associations protecting animals. And why a shade of palette? Because that's the only part that you can see when you wear a mask. So the only part where you need a makeup. And then the same KOL, he also started to go more stronger in commercial activation with brands, but without forgetting to be close to the consumers in Wuhan and Hubei. For example, for each order that was placed, having as a final address a person living in Wuhan or in Hubei, then you got a gift. So if I order for a friend living in Wuhan, so I can buy for him a product and he gets a gift as well. This was a way to compensate them for being locked down for 2 months without any possible delivery. And the same KOL as well, usually he sells cosmetics, but then he started to run a live streaming selling sessions to sell and promote only local brands from Wuhan. So we see that we are back to a more commercial strategy, but that's also socially responsible. So that's something that is very interesting. And even now that we are fully back to the new normals, like brands, they never forgot about sharing thank you messages with people in China. So that the same milk brands that donated milk boxes to the hospitals in Wuhan, almost at the end of the phase 2 of the epidemic, so when the recovery was almost fully implemented, they say, okay, now that all the doctors are leaving finally Wuhan because the situation is back to normal, we want to thank them. So we go back to a commercial communication content, but without forgetting to be socially responsible and empathic. And so nowadays we are in the phase number 3 actually of which is like brands are ready to be back to boost their sales. So and how they are doing it by relying on e-commerce festivals like Wu'erling or Liuyaoba. So festivals related to specific dates whose sounds in Chinese relates to other specific meaning, like I love you, or so they create any kind of opportunity to boost the sales. Also because it's done through the e-commerce platforms. So because it is the easiest way now to boost your sales, when the offline channels, he just recovered back. So if we want to sum up through a few words what we can learn from what happens in China during the past 3 months, I would highlight 3 words. First of all, agility. So brands need to be agile. So we see that Chinese brands quickly moved everything from online to offline to online. But why it was possible to be agile? Because they relied on pre-existing technological infrastructures. So it's important to be tech. It's important to have an infrastructure crossing together e-commerce, logistic, and payment. Only in this way is possible to move everything online. So the third keyword. And in terms of how to engage with consumers, brands need to really understand how to be close to the mood of consumers that changes according to the different phases of the epidemic. We see that in phase one, brands didn't mention any commercial content in their communication, but only empathic content. In phase two, they started to bring back commercial messages, but within a more social responsible narrative. And in phase number three, they are fully back to their commercial strategies, relying on the online festivals. But what is common to the peak of the epidemic is this omni-channels way of engaging with consumers. So consumers learn a new ways to interact with brands, and then they will keep it even after the epidemic. So omni-channels used to be a choice for brands in China. Now it's a must. So it's something that you have to do. So that's the sharing that I wanted to actually share with you today. Of course, if you are interested actually to know more, to get also more data and reports, I share here as well with all the audience my email, gianvito@creativecapital.cc, and we hope to rely on our actually special position by being here in China. I had this opportunity of go through the different phases of the epidemic and to live the new normal in China, to bring even more advices in case it's need, or more case studies related to what is happening here. And we hope that it could be helpful for brands in other countries.
Great. So Gianvito, we have many questions. I will attempt to get through as many as we can. So let's start. Are Chinese consumers starting to look for more value for money goods after the coronavirus outbreak?
Yeah, in terms of values, we can say that consumers, they started to, they are much more sensitive compared to being green, being socially responsible, and also they are more rational in their buying. So they're buying what is more related to well-being, healthcare, and in one sentence, they buy less, but they buy better. So that's a bigger shift in terms of values.
And there's a lot of questions around the kind of travel behavior and any changes in terms of skincare and beauty, you know, those industries.
Yeah, in terms of skincare, okay, and beauty, there was a boom during the first peak of the epidemic of eyeshadow palettes, so what you can see. But then also brands, they adjusted also their makeup. So they, in order to make it resistant to the masks. So in order, because usually traditional makeup, when you put on the mask, then it start to be damaged by the mask. The mask get brown actually, and so they improve the makeup in order to be resistant to the contact with fabrics. So that was a big evolution in especially the makeup for women. And also there is a big shift even in makeup in combining derma function with makeup function, because many people got problems of skins related to wearing your mask the whole day. And so makeup and skincare brands come with some solution in terms of how to help people to solve this acne of skin reactions related to wearing mask every day. And in terms of questions number 2, so how we travel now in China. In China now it's possible to travel. So at the beginning, flights and trains, they started to sell less tickets in order to keep a certain distance between people. Now we are almost back to normal because the situation is much better. And also the tourism is back, but compared to before, you need to book the visits to any place because they need to keep controlling the flow of people.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of the Western brands are very concerned because they very much relied on the outbound Chinese tourist. With those consumers now basically staying in China, they may want to rethink some of their marketing and also their product strategies.
Yeah, and exactly. So you need really to adjust marketing product strategies, especially for international brands. I see here an interesting question of asking, for example, with this increase of local brands, how does it impact international brands? It's related also to how to adjust your strategy. So international brands need really to be local in this case. So they need first to show that they are close to Chinese consumers by supporting them, by understanding what they went through. So they show support in terms of communications and also show support in terms of adjusting and upgrading your operations and your service to the needs of consumers. So now for Chinese consumers, everything should be fast, immediately available, and immediately deliverable. So if you cannot match these three requirements, then you are not relevant for Chinese consumers.
It's it's really interesting. A lot of the questions are around the luxury market and not only digitalization, but also the Daigou market. What can you tell us? What are some of the learnings in luxury that not only apply now, but also into the near future?
Yeah, in luxury markets, the big learning, because we had people were talking about revenge spending, because 2 weeks ago, the Hermes shop in Guangzhou, they got the biggest sales ever in China. But then we don't see it as a common phenomenon. It was just una tantum. So what we see, the big learning is that luxury brands learn that they have to be online. That's a big learning. So we see how they actually selected the right platform, which is Tmall Luxury Pavilion, which is a specific session on Tmall, which in terms of positioning is consistent with the luxury positions. And so we see that really how luxury brands that are the most traditional ones, we would say, in terms of being O2O, they learn the lessons. So this is the biggest lesson that we see from luxury brands. Of course, in terms of messages, then they are more socially responsible. So because they need, what is luxury is usually something that is not necessary. So especially in a situation in which people started to bring back to the basic of the life, you have to try the new way to inspire them and deliver your promise. Because you sell a dream as a luxury brand. So how to adjust your dream in order to be relevant for the new values of consumers, it's a challenge actually.
Yeah, no, well, one question is because, right, usually there's a runway, if you will, to kind of get a brand onto Tmall. Did you see also that accelerate and, Tmall working with the brands in a different way?
Yeah, Tmall actually it's accelerating their cooperation with brands in the sense that they launched what they call the branding alliance, so specific programs in which they launched a partnership with brands. So they started to promote this partnership by saying, if you cooperate with us on Tmall, then we provide you with delivery services, with support in terms of e-commerce. Of course, the brands need to have the right positioning consistent with Tmall, because Tmall is just one of the e-commerce platforms in China, but there are many, such as Pinduoduo, but everyone plays on a different market segment and on a different geography in China. And we see as well that Tmall partnered, for example, with cosmetic fairs in China. So they started to launch the fair online by helping brands to open their e-commerce shop instead of open their offline fair booth, for example. So of course, because e-commerce platform in China, they know that they are the main and most important actors to help brands to recover. So they really upgraded their role.
We have a lot of questions in terms of, what are the potential barriers to implementing these strategies in the West, so Europe, US, because so many of this, you really speak the truth, but how can we, adapt what we've seen and a lot of the innovation?
Yeah, the biggest challenge that we have is in other countries. We see this lack of integrated technological infrastructure supporting these evolutions. Because in China, really like JD, Alibaba, Tencent, Suning, they bring together logistics, online e-commerce, and payment. So bringing them through one platform. On top of which, they added a lot of services, such as social media, social sharing. And so local brands in China during the epidemic, they relied on this existing infrastructure to speed up. The problem is that in many countries abroad, we miss such a strong and integrated infrastructure. So it would take time to build it from scratch or build it up to a level that is really helpful to a quick recover. So the big challenge for brands abroad is to see how I can use what I have available so far in order to try to quickly evolve my business model.
A lot of questions on the beauty industry. So what is the future of physical retail? If omni-channel is booming and remains important, how does the beauty industry adapt, since quite often, kind of physical testing or interacting with a product is so important?
Yeah, in terms of, because so far, even if you can you can have a testing or an interaction online, but despite all the VR, but the offline experience is still something that cannot be fully replicated online. So what brands are trying to do now is to really to O2O, like for example, starting an engagement online and then probably ended it with an interaction offline. For example, there are some events related to discount, coupons, gift that are started online by brands, usually also using games, online games, but consumers, in order to accomplish it, to get the discount, they need to go offline to complete it. So it's a way to bring consumers from one channel to another. And this is a way to help also offline channels to go back to the new normal, which will be different, because now the big challenge also for brands in China, now that everything is omni-channel, is how to manage the two channels, online, offline, in order to avoid cannibalizations. Because if you treat them in the exact same way, with the same merchandising and the same price, then you are not going to have any synergy between the two. But one channel is going to eat the other.
There's a lot of questions around value for money. Do you see an increase in interest? Right, we talk about luxury being a dream. How do you see, right, there's the dream aspect of consumption, but there's also the reality. What's happening in terms of this kind of value for money segment?
Yeah, is bigger than before. It's so people they have a more conservative buying behavior. Also because if we think about the value pyramid of Maslow, we see that people, in order to start to dream, they need to fulfill their basic needs and to feel safe. So we see then at the beginning, the main needs from consumers was, I need to purchase in a safe environment. So that was the retail experience that they wanted. And then step number two, they started to ask for more and how to enjoy it. But it is a second step. And so in terms of spending behavior, people can think about a dream when they feel safe about their future and safe about their income. But when you are in a situation where several people lost their job in China, or they got their salary cut by 70%, then there is no much space for dreaming, but you get back to the basics.
It's quite helpful. And then a lot of questions around how can we predict, right? How can we take what we've seen in China and apply it to the West in terms of, how long will it take us to get back to the new normal? And what are some of the indications that we should be looking for to, kind of help us understand that?
Mm-hmm. Usually here, the main indication that has been seen was the evolution of the number of cases. And what is the challenge to be able to reply to this question is that China, yes, can be seen as a model, but it's not really a model because it's so different from other countries that actually what happened in China cannot be replicated. Because we see that how China reacted in a very fast way. They locked down completely Wuhan and the region around, and then they also almost locked down the other cities because people behaved as they were in lockdown. Because what is very important to understand here that Confucianism and the Confucian values in China, they played a great role in self-discipline people. And that's something that is different from the West. Like in China, the well-being of the society comes first. And so individuals, they have within their DNA this sense of, I need to behave well in order to protect the community. But in the Western culture, there's the individuals, they come first. So we see that why, for example, was not that challenging also for retailers or in China to cope with the new normal, because even when people could go out in China, they didn't go out because they didn't feel safe. So even if officially Shanghai government, Beijing government, they allowed restaurants to open, bars to open, it took weeks for local Chinese to be mentally ready and say, okay, I can go out or I can go buy a piece of clothes. No one thought about it. It's very different from what is happening in Europe, where when I see a few countries that started to open now their cities, people immediately, they go outside, say, finally I'm free. So in China, it didn't happen at all.
No, we've definitely seen the videos, the pictures, so I know what you're talking about. So this is once again, a lot around supply chain and, what were the disruptions? What kind of digitalization has occurred? RFID, AI innovations. Just what have you seen? I mean, we've heard some amazing stories, but what have you seen in terms of the changes? Because theoretically, those will be longer term.
Yeah, in terms of, we see that I share with you the experience of some of the brands that they work with us and then they produce relying on local supply chains. They relied on many suppliers and they clearly told us that 20% of their suppliers, so the smaller ones, they went bankrupt, so they had to close. Because they could not cope with 2 months of stopping their productions. So the only one that they could keep alive were the bigger one, or those ones that were able to rely on the delivery and supply chain also support of big e-commerce platforms. So this one probably, in terms the manufacture sector was probably slower compared to online retail to adjust and adapt, because there was something missing in terms of technology.
I think you just highlighted, and this will be the last question. We'll have to have you back. We still have 25 open questions, so I apologize to everyone on the line who we weren't able to get through. But if you could, right, you just highlighted, right, small and medium businesses are facing even greater challenges than the larger ones. What advice do you have for them?
The advice that I have is by being medium, by being small, does not mean that we don't have resources or we don't have capabilities to react, but focus on what is of your own environment, what is close to you. So start to thinking back to be local. So like segmentation, niche is the new big. So start from the consumers that are closer to you instead of thinking about how I can completely adjust my business models. So this is go step by step. So instead of thinking about going too far, just try to step up to the next step. I would say in a more feasible way. So consumers are focusing back to what is local. And so if brands can play well local, it's already a great result.
I love that. Niche is a new big. All right, with that, Gianvito, thank you so much. This was absolutely unbelievable, and we look forward to having you back to answer these other 25 questions.
It was my pleasure.
All right, take care. See you soon.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.